Hey everyone, I'm Josh. I'm a solutions consultant at PackState, along with my colleague Jesse. Today we've got Sean from Cymax here, ready to talk all things SMB1001. For the uninitiated and for the small businesses that are out there, could you let us know, what is SMB1001 in a nutshell?
Certainly. Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. So SMB1001 is, in my opinion, an elegantly simple yet highly detailed, when you peel back the layers, security control standard that has been designed specifically for small and medium businesses in mind. So they have evolved levels of controls ranging from bronze, silver, gold, platinum, all the way through to diamond. And each of those iterations of controls has a number of increasing sub-controls required as part of that. It's been designed specifically so that an organization that doesn't have a standard to align to can at least start with bronze as a milestone, start with a handful of controls that at least means that for the organization, they're able to say and demonstrate that they've met a particular minimum standard of compliance around a internationally recognized cybersecurity framework. I would also add in regards to that the insurance companies are recognizing this as a framework that is demonstratable to them to reduce the risk for the insurance provider, and as a byproduct, the insurance providers are offering, let's call it a consideration or a mild reduction in their policy as a result of organizations aligning to the SMB 1001 standard.
He said my favorite phrase, reduce risk. To me, that's everything that a security strategy needs to boil down to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I really like about SMB 1001 is it allows small businesses to actually reduce the risk that's relevant to them. It's a framework that's built for what the threats are that they're facing today, and it's not them trying to align to something that's built for an enterprise organization.
I completely agree. And if you look at it historically, what did we have here in Australia? We had Essential 8, which is not a standard. It's certainly something that an organization can align to, but we have ISO 27001, we have SOC 2, we have NIST, we have CIS, and these are great. These are fantastic standards. But for a lot of small businesses, if you went to implement those, you'd almost break the organization. So, like I said, the elegance of simplicity means that a small business can start to deploy this in palatable chunks, which improves their cyber prevention posture without breaking the organization.
Now, Sean, obviously you are quite knowledgeable on the SMB 1001 side. Talk to us a little bit about what your journey is within SMB 1001. Why are we here talking to you today?
I think, I suspect part of the reason that we're having this conversation today is because I have been quite vocal in regards to the SMB 1001 standard as a whole. I don't mind saying it, and I think those that are responsible for the standard as a whole will appreciate my statement that initially when I saw it, I kind of scoffed, thinking to myself, this shouldn't be called SMB 1001, it should be SMB 101. These are some basic things that any organization should be doing, and candidly, our client base has been doing beyond the minimum standard of SMB 1001 for as long as I can remember. But we started to peel back the layers of the controls, and as part of that process, there was a depth that wasn't there at first sight, and I got to appreciate the maturity of the sentence that said initiate VPNs or maintain a digital asset register, and I very quickly realized that these are things that all organizations should be doing, that in some cases we assumed some of our clients were doing and they're not, and all organizations really should. So whilst we're talking about fundamental things here, the thing I guess that I valued the most about it is that it brought things that we assumed organizations were doing to the forefront and gave us the ability to have that conversation. Yes, I think that like any one of the security standards that we have, no one of them will cover an organization 100%. None of them do. But for an organization that doesn't have anything, trying to go from nothing to ISO 27001 with a fully blown ISMS is a significant undertaking. And I believe that organizations should do that. But why not pick up bronze or silver or gold or diamond as part of your overall holistic security cyber prevention posture?
I think you've hit the nail on the head when you've said that some of these things are things that we would think that everyone's doing, and that they can be basic. When I look at the SMB space, however, I think I find that quite often what we think is something that everyone should be doing is quite often something that people aren't doing. I guess, what complications are there in the SMB space that this standard helps solve?
I'm going to answer that question in a slightly different way, because I think that organizations fall into two categories. There are the CEOs of organizations that I've seen and the board of directors who have been incredibly responsible about the data that they sit on. They have taken the position that they are the custodians of other people's information. And then there's another percentage of organizations who do things purely out of compliance, so legislative or insurance requirements. As an MSP community, there is a large percentage of those that I do some coaching and mentoring with who just aren't comfortable having a conversation with their client and saying things like, you should be at this minimum cyber prevention posture. And we're in October 2025, and at a conference recently, a colleague of mine got up on stage, and while he was talking about his service catalog, one of the questions from the room was multi-factor authentication. And in my mind, I wasn't thinking, why are we having the conversation about multi-factor authentication in 2025? I was thinking to myself, haven't we already had this conversation back in 2016, 2017? Like, these are things that most organizations should be doing. The unfortunate thing is that some MSPs just aren't comfortable having that business level of conversation because they're motivated by fixing problems and helping people. The great thing about SMB1001 is if the insurance company is encouraging the business to adopt this standard, and the standard says that you have to have this level of requirement, then they're just in there having a conversation saying, look, to meet gold, you've got to have this list of controls in place. And it just makes it, for them, I think it's been a nice segue for them to be able to have the conversations that they would prefer to have. And rather than them being somewhat uncomfortable about having the conversation, just being able to say it's being driven by industry, it's being driven by legislation, or it's actually a requirement for your insurance policy.
Awesome. Quick question in regards to how small businesses adopt this. Why should they be adopting this standard, and what are sort of the fallbacks to consider?
Excellent question. So why? I think it comes back to, for these directors, being able to take a defensible position of, we've aligned to a recognized international framework as a reasonable step on our cybersecurity posture journey. I often refer to SMB1001, some of the earlier controls like silver and gold, as being the milestones that you may want to land on for a short period of time, but certainly not a destination that you would want to stay there for too long, depending on the volume of personally identifiable information or the impact of a cyber incident for an organization.
Amazing. And when starting to implement this for yourselves internally and for your customers, were you finding that any of the particular controls within the 3 tiers, bronze, silver, gold, what were the most impactful given the current threat landscape you were facing at that point?
I think that the great opportunity here is to improve the cyber prevention posture for our clients. One of the places that I recommend that we start is actually with that asset register. Once you actually know the information that you have as an organization, then you can start to quantify the risk associated with that, and then put in place an investment strategy for protecting that data. And I think for us, the thing that's come out of it the most has just been how blindsided a lot of organizations have been about shadow IT. So we go into an organization and the marketing department's got a Dropbox account. And, oh, don't worry about it, we've only got marketing photos. And then the next thing you know, we start peeling back the layers, and it's like, actually, you've got a lot more information than just photos. And technically, should you have all of the photos there? Now, photos don't fall into PII in terms of serious harm, but you start peeling back the layers in terms of some of this other shadow IT, and there is a depth of risk that the organization as a whole didn't even know that they had.
I think it's a good point on the asset register. That's something that, I mean, if you look at other frameworks like CIS, it's number 1 and 2 is all about what do we have. And if you look at some of those ones, it's more, let's follow it in order, because how can we go and install, AV across every computer?
You don't understand your hardware and your software assets. What's the attack surface looking like?
Well, I remember having a coffee with the CEO of an organization, I'm going to say almost 2 years ago now. I think it was just after PAX 8 Beyond 24. And the CEO of this organization, 130 odd staff, said to me, Sean, I'm not sure that we need to go this level of cyber prevention posture that you've encouraged us to go to. We really don't have that much PII. This organization has 19 servers still, so they're kind of a legacy setup. And we have a tool that we're able to deploy, and it traverses their environment and quantifies the PII that they've got. And on one of their 19 servers, we found $150 million worth of PII.
Wow.
And that's, how do you quantify that? That's first party and third party losses. But it meant for us, when we were talking about protecting that environment, that's the level of the volume of data that they had that they didn't even know was at risk within their organization. And it was able to adjust that conversation. And that's just one example of an organization that I would say, moderate sized organization, where they didn't even know. They weren't even able to quantify what their PII risk was. And this is what we're seeing almost every week.
Change of pace a little bit. What's your favorite control?
I'd have to say, I'm laughing because I think there's two parts to that. What's my favorite? What's my least favorite? I think the digital. I think the digital asset register really for me is my favorite. It's been that light bulb moment for a lot of organizations where they had no idea just how much data they were sitting on. So being able to quantify the unquantifiable, bringing it from something they weren't aware of into the forefront, and then being able to have a discussion around that has meant for us, we're having a mature conversation. We're having a seat at the table with their finance and their risk committee or their board, as opposed to kind of being tucked away at the side. So I think for that reason, the digital asset register is one of my favorite controls.
You surprised me with that one. I thought Control 1 would be your favourite, which is have an MSP.
Ironically, people are already talking to me about that sort of thing, so I guess I've discounted that. I think the control that has surprised me the most has been ensuring that any RDP is connected via a VPN. And I think to myself, folks, it's 2025. Why are we still having this conversation? Like in reality. So there's two parts to that. Digital asset register is my favorite, and seeing things like the VPN with RDP, I'm like, that should almost be a given.
I think you've raised a really good point there, in that the thing I really like about SMB1001 at the moment, because it is such a new framework, is they are listening to what the feedback is. They're taking that on board, and then they're changing. So what we've seen in terms of changes from the 2026 has improved on what was going on in the 2025. Obviously, there is a steering committee, and they are listening to that feedback. I guess, have you had a look through the 2026 one?
Had a bit of light reading on the plane on the way down to a conference a week and a half ago.
Nice. So what were your thoughts on how that's evolved from the 2025? Do you think they're moving in the right direction? Is the feedback being heard?
So I think they're being really agile. It's great to see how quickly they're responding to things. And certainly if you look at the frequency of updates for Essential 8 versus how frequently SMB1001 are updating their controls, it's a positive thing. I would just say to the community as a whole, it's your business. You're an MSP. And if there are things that you think should be done over and above what's in the controls for SMB1001, you get to write the rules for your MSP. Just go ahead and incorporate them into your service catalog. That's exactly what we've done.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And as you said, staying agile, staying up to date is always important, especially from a security perspective, because they're doing it on the other side. They're constantly evolving. They're constantly changing. So it becomes really important for us to make sure that we're doing that from a defense perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the nice thing that I've seen, particularly with SMB1001, is the adoption by insurance providers. I'm seeing a number of insurance brokers having proactive conversations with their clientele, and part of the conversation that we're having with them when they reach out to us and say, hey, our insurance provider has said we should be considering this controls, is great. What were their motivations? The short answer is because it will positively affect our annual premium. Insurance providers are, the good ones, actively incentivizing businesses for adopting the SMB 1001 controls, which is great to see.
Indeed. And especially with initiatives such as the Cyber Wardens program, enabling people to get to bronze, and there's been a couple of other initiatives in the last couple of weeks. What would your advice be to other MSPs who are looking to adopt this framework as a starting point? How could they get started?
I would say the first thing would be, if you're not part of a community like SMBIT, reach out. SMBIT has a wealth of members that have committed to and are now at the SMB 1001 Gold standard. They have members now at the Platinum standard, and they also have members at the Diamond standard. And I'm not saying this just because I'm in the PAX8 studio, but PAX8's also committed a fair amount of resources to the standards. So as an MSP, if you haven't had the conversation, reach out to your CAM at PAX8. They can certainly put you in contact with a number of other MSPs that have worked through this. Heck, I did a workshop. I had 17 MSPs at my office, and we unpacked one of the first iterations of the 25 standard in detail, just so that we could get that rapid adoption, so that as an MSP community, we could deploy that through to our organizations, our clients, with a depth of understanding, and helped them, educated them on the depth of complexities above that. Well, it's just a pretty surface level basic control. It's an elegantly simple framework, but the beauty is in the depth of controls and the elegance of its simplicity.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think community is a big piece of that. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Josh, Sean, this was a really insightful discussion from my perspective. I'm really very excited to see what other frameworks we're going to cover in this podcast series. For those of you at home, if you've got any questions, please chuck your thoughts in the comments or reach out to your local account manager and see if they can help you from the SMB1001 side. Sean, am I right in saying that people can also get in touch with you if they have any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with a number of other MSPs around coaching and advisory. Anyone who's listening is welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation. Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. And to everyone at home, see you in the next episode of Frameworks in Focus.
See you then. Thank you for watching our Frameworks in Focus video series. If you're curious to learn more about the certification, please visit the Dynamic Standards International website or the CyberCert website. If you'd like to get started, feel free to check out the CyberCert SKU from the PAX8 Marketplace, where purchasing certification credits through the Marketplace will net you a 20% discount. If you're curious to learn more about CyberCert, feel free to chat to your account manager, where we'll be able to book you in with a solutions consultant to walk you through this particular certification and framework. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video in the series.